Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be talking about what's new in MATLAB in the latest release of R2021b. I'm Heather Gore, and I'm on the MATLAB product marketing team. I work a lot on MATLAB, obviously, and data science, deep learning, and Python integration. And I'm here joined by my good friend and colleague, Jan. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Jan.
Hello Heather, hello everyone. You hear from my accent, I'm French, so I'm calling you all the way from Paris. And well, I'm very happy to join you today for this What's New session, Heather. And I think you kind of brought me in because there's some Python, coding Python going on. So I'm quite interested, and I'm also here to answer questions in the chat, so don't hesitate.
Excellent. Yes, indeed. We are going to be talking about lots of our favorites, including some new Python integration stuff, which is, again, partly why Jan is here, because we are the Python kids, the partners in crime for that. It's not a crime. Anyway, so this is very exciting. The reason we're looking so fabulous is because we're trying to make this a red carpet style release. Not really, but we do want to make a big deal about the fact that we do release every 6 months, and there are lots of wonderful updates. It's hard to keep up with sometimes, so we want to help point you in the right direction, and of course, celebrate all the wonderful things that are now available. This is just another image and an example of some of our fabulous previous interviews together. So what we're going to cover today is a lot of updates we're going to group them by analyzing and visualizing data. We'll talk about that first. It's a hot topic that everybody kind of needs to do. And then some really nice updates in programming, which is where Jan will come in and show us some great stuff with the Python interface. We'll talk about some awesome performance updates, and then a couple of highlights in the toolbox areas, especially data science, deep learning, stuff that I guess I'm interested in. And as Jan mentioned, we will absolutely take your questions. We'll pause, so feel free to put those in the chat. We're happy to hear from you and gear this to whatever you want to talk about. So one of the first things, I'm probably not going to use a lot of slides, but it does help keep us in check because there's so many different updates. So talking about our data analysis and visualization areas, the last couple of releases, we've been seeing a lot of effort in these live editor tasks. So hopefully you've used these before, but the latest release, you'll find a couple of new ones. We'll show these in just a minute. But you notice the theme of these are often, data cleaning and those kinds of tasks that you need to do over and over again, and you're not really sure about the methods. So super, super helpful. Again, lots of investment. And so even the last couple of releases, you'll want to check up on those if you're a few behind. I know Jan and I love these for data analysis. We use them all the time, especially in that one Python demo with the time series data. It's perfect. So I'm going to actually go ahead and show this. I'm going to use a demo. Well, it's actually an example from the doc. It's just a data set from the doc that I like. It has some cyclone information. And partly the reason I wanted to show this is because it's the kind of data that's perfect for our live editor tasks. So I'm going to go ahead and insert one. And this is kind of where we're talking about these. They're sort of like little apps. If you haven't used them before, you just kind of put them in your script along with the rest of your code. So the one that we were talking about, this compute by group, is a new one. So that's pretty awesome. Even before that, actually, let me put in one of the other ones that is relatively new. The create plot task was the most recent release, and it's gotten updated in 21b. And so it's really helpful, especially if you're trying to share this with somebody. Like if I'm sending this to Jan, I want to give him a head start maybe, and add some variables and get him started, and then he can go and explore however he likes. So let's just find something good here. Geoplot maybe. right? That does not look that great. But that's the beauty of the live task, because you can adjust and you can change. And so, again, the kind of things that are very, it tend to be kind of, iterative, and you kind of do over and over again, that's one of the values of those. So actually, I had a script prepared already for this, so I wanted to just show that quickly because it has a bunch of nice grouping live tasks in there. Let me. All right. So again, these are from the new ones are compute by group and normalize. And I just wanted to show some of here's the compute by group. Sorry, I'm going to go ahead and run this. So one of the things I love the most about this is the visualization that shows you what's going to happen by the end. And so this is kind of like a, I don't know, pivot table, or, one of those things where, like in our cyclone example, we have different grades or different severities of the storm. And so we want to know, different values based on that group. And so that's where this task will come in handy. And then again, these little visualizations here will help you understand what type of operation you want. In this case, we just want, say, the minimum and median for each grade. So you can see, there's all the different options for summary stats, and you could use a custom function, kind of compare and contrast. And then, of course, with these live tasks, the code is right there too. So there's not much to it, but it does allow for, that nice experimenting.
It looks a little bit like a pivot table in Excel, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a similar kind of idea where you're taking, different groups, or even if you look here at this next one, I'm using the timestamp to bin. And so you could look at, kind of that same idea, like you said, with the pivot table, you kind of group them by a different category or numeric label or something, and kind of add and subtract as you need. So it's a great way to do that interactively. Of course, the functions have been around a long time, but sometimes it's a lot of trial and error, I guess, in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I mean, I know how to do that in Excel, but to be honest, I think it would have taken me some time to search, and I'm lazy, so I quite like this one.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that are great about the tasks, especially things like stacking, unstacking, those rearranging, those kinds of things. You're not sure what you need right away, so it's great to just try them and experiment. All right, so that is about, oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm gonna go out of order a little bit here, because I want to, but I really, really want to show this. This is such a fun, exciting thing. We do have a couple of updates for our live controls, which I'll talk about in a second. But if you notice here, I'm creating an animation of cyclones from 5 years, and you've been able to create animations for a while. But the thing that is new is you can export it. And so if I want to create a GIF or GIF or a JPEG, or MP4 or something, I can just hit this little export animation and save it. So that is awesome. Obviously you could do this before, that's no problem, but you previously had to capture those as a video with a video reader object and writer. So that is super easy. Now I just have this little GIF or GIF, if you prefer, that captures it, and it was just a click of a button. So that's one of those little kinds of things that is such a huge, awesome time saver for me. I'm like really excited about that one. So I'm glad to have that script in front of me, so I was able to show that right away. But again, you should see this anytime you have those kinds of animations. There's just a button, and you can save it as a little movie. Send it to your grandma if you want, or whoever you want. So I'll try to get back to, and Jan, jump in if there are some questions to help guide us. But I guess I talked about a couple of these things already.
Yeah, so far the questions are mostly, casual, engaging. So I would interrupt you if we have some about what you're presenting.
Excellent. All right. Well, we like engagement either way. It doesn't have to be in the form of a question. All right. So this is just an example excuse me, of the normalization task. Again, one of those things that you need to, try different options. So definitely something to check out, if you have kind of messy data, very valuable. So a couple of other functions are included in this update. One that I love is trended decomp. And it's basically trended decomposition. So we've had decomp for a long time where you take this long-term trend out of your signal. But this also includes the seasonal trends as well. So there's a lot of possibilities in this function. I could probably talk about it for a really long time, so I won't. Just kind of point you in the right direction. But it's a really great one for this kinds of, and of course, MATLAB users tend to have a lot of signal or seasonal kinds of data. So definitely check that one out, especially in the spirit of data cleaning.
I actually wanted to use this one for, our weather example, because it's, the type of data when you want to break it down between the seasonal and every day you get. So maybe we can do an update on our MATLAB and Python webinar with this.
Yes, that's a great idea. I love it. Yeah, that's exactly, like you said, it's exactly the kind of data. You have daily and seasonal kinds of data. Perfect. All right, and so I have to sneak in a couple of math specifics. There's, of course, math team that's very invested all the time, but sometimes we tend to really shout about deep learning or wonderful live editor things, and we forget about our math roots, so to speak. So we've got a couple of ODE solvers. This is, for example, just a couple of ones that might be of interest to everyone. And this is there's some specifics here, but basically there's the higher order Runge-Kutta solvers. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. Runge-Kutta. Somebody correct me.
Runge-Kutta. Let me search it up.
It's gonna sound better with your accent, not my Pittsburgh city school accent. It's not gonna do justice, I'm sure. Runge-Kutta. While he's figuring it out, either way, the higher order are now available. So maybe you've used ODE 45 a bunch. 78 and 89 are available. So you have the higher order options for Runge-Kutta solvers. So again, just take, if this is of interest to you, take a look. This is some maybe specific things that people might be interested in. All right, so another thing that, maybe this isn't as applicable to everybody, but just a nice reminder that we're always kind of upgrading to the latest versions where we can. So the new update for HDF5 is available this release, and there are some options if you are doing a lot of HDF5 stuff. I think the big takeaway here is that if you were using the Python libraries, you won't have conflicts with the library versions anymore. And some people would use the C or Python libraries and have issues with that. So cool, no more. Another good update in the spirit of a lot of the things we've been talking about, like interactivity and code generation, is reading and writing interactively from devices. So these are basically apps for TCP/IP serial kinds of data, just like the import tool, basically. But now you can just point at kind of to that serial communications. So definitely something to check out if you're into that. More in the spirit of the visualizations and stuff that we talked about, you are now able to pass the table data types to more charts. And so this has been going on, especially the new kind of latest and greatest have always been able to accept table, but we've even been updating for things like scatter. So something to kind of keep an eye out for, just making life easier to use some of the nice updates in the most recent releases. And then, of course, we saw that create plot live task. But the one thing I really wanted to point out this release is a lot of community contributions from GitHub. So this is so awesome, really custom visualizations with the latest chart authoring framework, which was released a couple of releases ago. But now these are all sort of templated and available on GitHub and on File Exchange for everybody. So that's really cool. I love this little pie charts and some of those graph options are really great.
We had a questions earlier around the availability of some AI models, and I actually shared a link to our GitHub. We have a dedicated one, right? Like the MATLAB deep learning for. There was a question around Transformer GPT-2, but I guess we maybe have another organization under which we store all of those related to graphics.
Yeah, exactly. So there are a couple of I think if you go to the main MathWorks one, there are links for all of those. That should, because they're reference architectures and the AI models and the examples are all kind of linked from the MathWorks one. But that's a really good point too. You know, you can kind of sort and select by what you're interested in. It also should have a link on the from the MathWorks site on the main AI pages for the import of models. Yeah, we can share those as soon as possible.
Sharing it right now.
Excellent. Oh wow, he's on top of it. So, any other questions before we move on to some other nice updates?
We do have one question regarding the Rangekuta. I still don't know how to pronounce that. The solvers, are they available in Simulink too?
It should. So I guess I would have to check. I would have to check, but in theory, I mean, well, in practice, you can do anything in the MATLAB function block. That's completely possible from Simulink. So I'm not sure about the availability, like from a specific dropdown in Simulink, but at least in the, you know, if you're using the MATLAB capabilities through Simulink, that shouldn't be a problem. But that's something we can follow up on. Maybe there's a couple Simulink folks in the chat. If so, chime in, please. If not, we can follow up in the comments. Good question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that since it's a very standard numerical method for integration, I'm very sure it is available, at least in one form or another. I think it's another name. It could be OD4 for the fourth order Rangekuta, but
yeah, it's just
dig deeper.
Yeah, so you might be able to, you could check into the order of the others as well. So yeah, good point. All right, I guess we shall carry on. Yeah, so just kind of getting into, that's kind of the broad impact, but there's also some more broad impact. Anybody that touches MATLAB and uses the editor will experience this, so you don't even need to do anything. So basically, the things that I've been showing in the live editor, a lot of those key features are being brought over to the traditional editor, the plain text editor. And so things like, you know, we're just pointing out a couple here, but things like the code refactoring, you know, converting from a script to a function, that's available now. Block editing, which was before only in the live scripts. And then the debugging capabilities are now consistent throughout. And then also, of course, the code suggestions and live function hints that we have seen, you know, these are kind of the top features that everyone wanted everywhere. So those are the ones that we have prioritized this release. And so again, you'll see these without doing anything, but you know, you can always take advantage of the new capabilities. So we saw this just a little bit, the interactive controls for, you know, sliders. We've had these for a while now. This release, you know, we kind of just like to remind people that, you know, they're quite nice for just sharing. You can even make it into sort of a mini little app by hiding the code. And then you have some more capabilities in the last couple of releases to control how it's being used. And so, you know, just something again to check out as you're, you know, building up your code bases for this kind of stuff. And especially last release, you can actually use default values and variables from the last or from the workspace. So, you know, again, all in the spirit of sharing and making life easier. And I mentioned the animations. It's extremely exciting to many of us, although it seems small, very useful. Again, you can just export it right there. You can control the playback speed. You know, you're good to go. So pretty exciting. You know, a lot of people used to use this for like microscope, like scrolling through images and things like that. So it'll be awesome to be able to see that super easily. So another thing that we've been hearing for a long time, excuse me, is basically just being able to run things in the background asynchronously. So it's sort of like threading, and the actual technical functionality is using the parallel computing functionality that's now available in MATLAB. And so it's using background pool. And so in that spirit, you'll also be able to write nice parallel code that is consistent through, whether you're using parallel or serial MATLAB. And so that's awesome. The other thing, really the thing that it does, I think the highest impact is being able to just use MATLAB. Say whenever an app is running or whenever your script is running, you could just go open up a file, you can use something else. And so that's kind of this first like bullet point is really the biggest impact for everybody, I guess. So don't be afraid. You can click on things and you can do other stuff while code is running. And then to talk a little bit more about that parallel computing functionality, you now can do that, kind of asynchronous workflow where you don't have to have, checks of seeing if they're, capable of parallel and then using different code. It'll just be very consistent. And so that's great. Let's see. Yeah, so it's just using the main MATLAB process as a thread. So just for kind of technical brevity. All right, so I'm going to come back to this in a second. I wanted to finish out the programming because then we wanted to save some time for the Python goodies. So another thing we've been really investing in the last couple of releases is our class customization and object behavior. So in this release, pretty exciting. You can actually customize the indexing capabilities. So a lot of people use this for basically data types, and you can customize how that works now. And there's now class aliasing, so you have backwards compatibility. Again, we won't get into it too much, but this is really exciting, especially if you've been looking for it. And then finally, before we hand it over to Jan for a sec, not a sec, longer than that. There are always huge investments in our unit testing capabilities. And so this is really one of the biggest, I think, values of MATLAB is just the ability to use the unit testing suites and the capabilities that, MathWorks itself uses to test MATLAB. And so now you'll be able to just create a template right from the new dropdown. And so that's really exciting. Hopefully more people will just be like, oh yeah, hey, I could just create a test. But it also helps you, if you're like me, I tend to have the doc example up right as I'm, creating a test, no matter how many times I've done it, or, pull up the last one. But so this is great because it'll just give you a template. All right, so Jan is going to take us through some pretty exciting updates through the Python interface. There's a couple of nice functions here. I can stop sharing while you carry on. But we've got two new functions, and it's basically making things easier to, previously you would have to create a module or, maybe rearrange some of your code. But now you can actually, run a script or just Python statements without any problems in MATLAB. And so Jan is going to take over and give us an example because this is his area. This is, both of our area, but he's very excited.
I'm sharing my screen. Do you see it?
Yes, looks good.
So kind of a casual introduction to the subject. I end up most of my time, searching stuff over the internet, like how do I do X? How can I, MATLAB and Python Y? And so I end up copy pasting a lot from Stack Overflow and MATLAB answers. Here is one example, and before jumping into this, I think I'll show you some code for you to understand why this new feature PyRun is quite interesting. So let us start with the previous state of how you were before 21b able to connect MATLAB and Python. So here is my MATLAB environment. I'm going to start from scratch. I'm just going to share with you here PyEnv, the location of my Python environment. It's a 3.8. It's a basic C Python installation from python.org. I don't know so much about the modules that are installed, but it doesn't matter so much in this case. So the first thing that I could do is, let's say I want to find a way to call this function squared from MATLAB. And well, it's a very silly example, right? So what I could do is, as of it's been starting in 2014A, so it's not very recent. I can just delete this and just have it like this on the side. This example here, it's very basic. I found it on Stack Overflow. What I can do is call it with this mechanism, py dot first the here name of the module. So the module is called SQD. All right. And then you can see already that it's auto-completing. It's offering me the choice of the function that is inside of it. And here it's just the squared function. So, I'm going to give it 42. So 42 is it's a MATLAB double by default. But what it's doing here, it's actually transferring it to the equivalent data type in Python in order to run the squared function and handing over back the result as a MATLAB double again. So as you can see, this was up until now the preferred way for us to call a MATLAB function from MATLAB, a Python function from MATLAB, sorry. But let's say now I found another version of it, and I think it's going to be up to maybe not this one. Let me look at this one in my browser here. I found another version here that is a different implementation. I think it's not doing a squared function anymore, but anyway, it's just to show you about some of the pains of interactively changing the implementation of a function while prototyping. So this interface that we have in order to call a function, it's super good. I like it, but it's giving you some constraints when you're prototyping. And I'm going to show you just now why. So let's say I'm modifying here this function. Now what I'm doing is I'm redefining it like this. And now it's not taking one argument into account, but it's taking two arguments. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to ask him, okay, randomly just do 42, 42. Okay. But what's happening is that it's actually still taking into account the previously loaded SQD module. So that's annoying, and that's when you need to go and clear classes first. Okay, and then you need to load the module with py.importlib. Okay, importlib dot import module. Okay, you need to load the module SQD. It's a bit painful, sorry for that. And then what you need to do is py.importlib again and reload it. So this is the way for you to interactively change something inside of your your script on the right. And here you're going to run this. It's going to clean everything, clean your workspace, reload the module. And so once you do that now, once you reload this function, the SQRD function, it's not working. And obviously, here there's a problem because it's live. We want to introduce some problems live.
This is how it works. It's just the way it works.
It's the way it works. It's just to make sure that we are not recording this.
We're real. We're real people. We get errors too.
So, okay, this time I should have been able to reload my module, and I'm going to try it again. And now it works. Now it's giving me an answer, and it's taking into account this modification. So that's, as you can see, it's just not super. It's not super convenient to do that if you would want to iterate on your code. So what we do is we have two new functions. We have the pyrun function, that we will see in a minute. But before that, I'm going to use the pyrun file function. So the pyrun file function, you can look it up with the help. What it's going to take in as input is a file, as you can probably guess from the name of the function, and it can pass some output variable. For now, we are just going to run this function, and we're not going to ask for anything in return. For us to do that, what we'll do is I think we'll take another function here that takes into account the fact that if you call this script, if you run it, like if you would run it from a command line, then it's going to run the function and write to the standard output with the function sys, the system function. It's a little bit of Python. I'm not going to go into detail about this specific example. It's just to show you how it works. So sqd2.py, and we can just simply run it. And obviously, since I'm not giving it like the documentation probably asked me to, since I'm not giving it any input argument, like 42, not like this. It's again a demo. So, okay, we're going to go back to the slides. It's more sure. So the first way to call the sqd when it was, well, I'm going to modify it back to be this version again, and then I'm going to switch to this one. And then you'll see, okay, in order for it to run, there might be some slight modification we need to do. So let's consider this here. What we need to change here is, and if you follow carefully with me, do you see Heather? Something that I did wrong? SQD. Oh, it's one and only argument, right?
Yeah, that's what I think the text. I think that also one quote.
Silly me, new functions, and you try to go live and present them, right?
Well, I know. It's exactly how it works.
Shouldn't do
We're
that.
learning as we go.
Indeed.
But this is great. It's a reminder of how you do it. You look at the error message, look at the doc, ask your friend. That's how it works.
That's real life programming. So we're just giving you some practice in real time. Exactly. So here you can see, maybe we can go back to the previous implementation here, and actually, voilà, go back to this one. We can even modify the other one, like here. We're going to modify this with this version now, and we can just run it again, and it's working. You don't need to reload it and everything. All of this annoying part that I had to know how to do first, and then, well, you can find out about it in the documentation. But again, if you want to do some interactive, trying out and copy pasting some stuff that you found on the internet, I would recommend you to use this new function pyrun file.
Yeah, definitely.
Any questions so far? Do you see some in the chat, or maybe you have questions on how you would want to use this pyrun file function for your own copy pasting?
No, yeah, I think that's exactly it. The copy pasting. That was like the copy pasta Python life that I live. Find something that you need to do it real quick, and go to town. I mean, I think it's awesome. And like you said, you don't have to worry about, reloading and that kind of stuff as much. And the like data type translations are, working a bit better because of the interactivity there. So definitely something to check out. And also just to remind too, we work with the development teams very closely. So if you have ideas, or if this kind of made you think of something that you really want to do that you can't do yet, or something like that, we love to hear it. It's a very active area. Clearly, we've had lots of great updates, in the last couple of releases.
So the pyrun file, that's one way to code interactively Python, but there's another one, pyrun. I talked about it briefly. Yep. Maybe I can just quickly introduce it. So pyrun, what does it do? We can check again with F1
This is
the
my
help.
copy pasta. That's my copy pasta solution, right?
Yeah. So it's taking code as input, and this code will be executed. Okay, that's fairly easy to understand. And we can also pass arguments as input and output like this. So we're going to start by, this reminds me of one method that I quite like in Python, that is defining lists with list comprehension. This notion that you can write some sort of a for loop inside of a list. I quite like it. It's fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a very basic list like this one here. So here, when I do that, and I'm going to jump to the next, to another section, what you will see is that it's actually persistent. If I ask here to print the list, then it's still defined. So it's actually quite convenient to have this persistence for interactivity. Again, it's not something that you had with our previous py dot name of the module, name of the function convention. So those are two different use cases. Now what we might want to do is, as I said, run a list comprehension. For instance, we will do, we will just elevate all of the values at the square. So L2, like this, L2 equals now a list comprehension that is going to be I, the element elevated at square 2, for E in L. Okay, and I can print L2 directly. Huh, that's not what we expected, is it? You know why? This is not your friend. Yeah, this is not actually a squared function. So
yes, Python notation. Yes, that's a good one though.
Python.
That really trips you up. I like it.
I just wanted to kind of mess up with you. I was like,
this is how it works. Live stream. This is it.
Yeah.
It's real life.
So yeah, anyway, it was just a very simple example. Just wanted to give you some of my own experience about those new functions. But if you have question, if you see that the audience has question, I'm here.
Awesome. There were a couple, while we're on the topic, this is pretty much finishing up. We just have a couple more pointers for everybody. But there was a couple, let's see, how to use functions without actually running the file. I'm not sure I understand completely, so maybe we can talk a bit about that. There's also how to use classes from Python.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, do you have any note, like, is there anything interesting about what the new functionality for that? I'm trying to think.
It's not so new. I think it's going to be the same way of calling functions. Like I introduced with calling py dot the name of the module dot the name of the function, and you'll do the same for when you have a class def.
Yeah. Yeah, so that should be about the same. The other question, which is probably why I'm getting all forest and trees. The other question was about import statements. And so let me share my screen. I forgot. It actually has an example about import statements. So you can put that in, I showed the Pyron. You could actually add all those things. Again, that's my copy pasta solution. Whenever you find it, just stick it in a string and use the Pyron function. So I think, that's a really good solution for that kind of workflow where, again, you could always use the py.json blah, blah, blah. But, you just stick it in a string and go to town. So very exciting. Definitely check out more in the doc, and we can share, if you, we're always happy to come back and do more. We've done some nice live streams on Python, so we can always come back. Couple last things I wanted to cover was just the performance updates, and we can, make sure people have questions. We won't have to go through all of the different updates. We'll just guide it based on your questions. But this is something that everybody should experience, the continuous updates in performance. And so this has been going on for a long time. The performance team is amazing, led by Anush and friends, the really, really good team. And they constantly use customer and user kinds of code in the test suites. So really awesome, making sure that things are working fast and faster every release. So then if you take a look, I mean, this is kind of just a broad statement too. We only covered a couple of things, sort of the stuff we were interested in the most and find that other people are interested in. But there's a whole slew of release notes that we'll share the link for. And you'll also notice that there are specific performance release notes for certain things that really got a targeted focus for this release. So for example, we talked about tables. This is a really big one. The indexing performance was improved. And so this also kind of shows how to get through read through the notes, because it even has the measurements, to give you more clarity on what those performance improvements are and examples that you can use in your suites if that's what you need to do. So really cool. And that kind of goes for everything. There are, you can kind of dig in more in each different section, each different capability. So then just a couple for performance that might be interesting, the indexing that we talked about with tables, different parts of app design have gotten updates like UI figures, plots, and saving them. And then the comparison tool is really got a nice performance update. So I'll just mention a couple things here. I just wanted to kind of point out at least one in the spirit of our other stuff that we talked about. There's a really nice task now for clustering. And so this is in the statistics machine learning toolbox, but it's very similar to the task that we showed earlier where, again, clustering is such a trial and error. A lot of times you have some idea of what statistical methods you want to use for the cluster distances and things, but you're not always sure. And so this has everything right there. You can just adjust and play around with it. Really, really awesome. And then, of course, because we've talked about this many times before in this channel, there's a couple of updates in the classification and regression learners. You'll be able to export models directly to or prepared for deployment so that you don't have to do anything else to them. They can just be used in production server. And then there's also a couple of great new features for, generating features. So definitely something to check out. Again, you can take a look in the statistics machine learning area. And since somebody mentioned about Simulink earlier, there are more options for neural networks and C++ code gen doing this in Simulink. So definitely something to check out. I think that pretty much covers it. What questions do we have? I moved the chat. I'll put up our contact information while we're waiting for questions. Anything good? Let's see. Not that it has to be good. I'm looking for, I'm just, saying something while I'm looking through the comments.
We had a question around, can we call an ODE solver on Python?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem.
I guess the question is like reverse, right? It's not what we showed. It's more like, can I call the MATLAB function from Python? Right. That's what I understand from the question. And we haven't shown that, but yes, it's the MATLAB engine API. Maybe you can share this from the documentation. Yeah. So it's calling MATLAB from Python in this case.
Yeah, so let me just go to, I can just kind of teach you, everybody, even though maybe you've seen this before. But if you go to the documentation, first, the release notes is up here. So you can just click right in, see all the details. But the Python stuff is in the external language interfaces section. And so you'll see there's obviously all of it's there. But if you're trying to call MATLAB, the ODE solvers, you can go using the engines. This is calling MATLAB from other languages, calling MATLAB from Python. So lots of examples, troubleshooting, information. And even there was a live stream a couple of months ago that we did was a 2-part live stream. We spent the second part entirely in Python. So that would be a good one to check out for, just for a couple of examples and pointers. All right, anything else? Any other questions? We can take another minute.
We have a tricky one. It's kind of related to external interfaces, but it's can we support Android deployment, which I think is maybe not directly an application, like I think maybe more web app or having a Java application. I know Java desktop application are feasible, but
yeah, I would check the add-on explorer. The Android support package page should have some updates or whatever the latest and greatest are. And then the stuff for Android or sort of the more specific OS type things out there, you probably find those on the file exchange through support packages. So that would be the place to go. And then of course, like Jan mentioned, you could always use like Java, C++ kinds of interfaces, and of course deploy it and call things after the fact. So yeah, we can always follow up on that one if needed.
There might be another way to address this. I know it's not like a tailored application, but I've seen already an example of someone using our MATLAB mobile application in order to perform some image capture with an iPhone. I think it even had like some sort of a specific, for microscope kind of a loop or lens. And they were so gathering the image like this and running a simple MATLAB function for classification or whatever it was. I think image processing, something like this.
Yep. Yeah, I had created an Android app a couple of times from the food classifier. So obviously you need that on your phone.
It's super important.
Obviously, but I just did it kind of on its own. And I used the REST API from production server, or I can't remember now. I think I used the REST API. Yeah, because it's calling that. But yeah, so there are lots of different ways to answer the question. There are lots of different ways to do that. These are where I would mention about the support packages. The sensors stuff would be here. I'm not sure about the specific, APK support that was in the comment, but you can check it out and we can always follow up. All right, anything else before we wrap it up? Put our contact info in case you think of something later. Oops. There's our big exciting release red carpet visual.
Chatbot. No, it's not. I'm not asking how to do chatbots in MATLAB. I wouldn't dare. But that's what this guy was trying to do. He developed a chatbot and he wants to deploy. So that's an interesting one.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I had a chatbot I started for one of our hack days. It's not complete, but it was using MATLAB answers. I called it Cleve, ask Cleve or whatever. Anyway, I don't have to. I won't explain it any further.
You don't have to explain yourself.
Anyway, all right. So yeah, that's great. I guess I don't see anything else, so we'll wrap up and invite you to keep in touch and let us know what you want to hear more about. We'll be back in a couple weeks. I'm not sure exactly what's on the schedule next. I think we're talking about Simulink soon. So we'll be able to answer some of those questions that we didn't get to. Again, thank you so much. I'm Heather, and thank you, Jan, for joining me and showing us all about the new Pyrun and Pyrun file.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for your questions. It's great. Catch you later.